Hi there, this is Pat McDonald, your host for Vote for Vermont, where our tagline is listening beyond the sound bites. Joining me in studio today is Tawnya Kristin, who is the executive director of the Green Mountain United Way. We go back a few years, so we were just gabbing a little. And Rebecca Baruzzi, very nice, community impact director for United Way, and we're talking about United is the way, and you'll see where that phrase fits in all over the place. I love it.
Yes. Yes.
United is the way. Very good. So we'll start with you, Tawnya.
Sure.
Just to tell us a little bit about your background and how you came to be the
How I came to
director.
be.
How you
Yes.
came
Oh
to
my.
be. No, that's
Question
fine.
of the universe. Yes. We could do a deeper dive on
Yes,
that.
we
but
could. That'd
yes.
be a whole show.
Yes, it would be. Well, first, it's just a pleasure to be sitting here with
Thank you.
And I think I was mentioning to you prior to us coming on the stage, so to speak, is that it's almost 10 years to the day that you and I sat when I first started at United Way.
Right.
So almost a decade ago, and we're moving now into our 50th anniversary for Green Mountain United Way, which is
that's great.
a huge milestone. So incredibly proud to be sitting here just representing the legacy of the Green Mountain United Way. In my history, similar to yours, it's definitely an interesting journey
Yes,
to
it
get
is.
to, where I am today. And it includes working for public transportation for a little over 12 years, so Green Mountain Transit Agency. And that was really one of the first kind of introductions to getting very involved in our local communities, understanding how transportation connects people, and how to really listen first and find out what a community needs. So that experience I felt really prepared me well for the work of United Way, which is all about community connections and how we do our work.
That's great.
Yeah.
I'm going to resist from telling my story about you.
Oh,
'cause
please.
Please
Yes.
don't, or please do.
Please do.
Oh, this
Please
is great.
do. So this is good
Did you hear
TV
this
right
story?
here.
Do you know this story?
I
Maybe,
gave
but
her a
I'd like to hear
glimpse.
another version.
Yes.
This is the real version. So I was on the select board in Berlin, and all the nonprofits submit letters and signatures to get on our ballot because they would like us to provide funding for them, which makes a lot of sense. So the Green Mountain Transit had their name and number on the ballot, and usually the pre-town meeting day, the nonprofits show up and talk about why we should give them money. So we're at the school, and is anybody here from Green Mountain Transit? And Tanya's in the back and says yes, and she comes walking down the aisle, and she's got this really tight-fitting black dress on.
Yes, I did.
And she is maybe 9 months, 3 days pregnant.
Yes.
It was like any minute. We gave her whatever she wanted. I said to her, "You're going to not have one person voting against you," and they didn't. Everybody said, "Give her the money." The poor woman. That was
to labor.
so funny. Every time I think of her, I think of this woman walking down.
The
I mean,
big belly.
You were big.
Yes. I was very big. So I did. So in all fairness, I did go into labor 48 hours later.
Did you really?
Yeah, and I was actually having Braxton Hicks during that.
Oh, well,
that
you
thing.
seriously looked it. I mean,
I'm dedicated to get that funding for public transit. But yes, I appreciate you remembering that moment.
that's all I can think about. That's all. Every time somebody says Tawnya, they ask me on the board, "Do I know you?"
Yeah.
And that's what came
That's
to mind. I
the
said,
woman
"Oh, I know her."
That's the 210-pound pregnant woman coming down and asking for 10.
It was ridiculous.
Yeah.
Oh my God! I give you a lot of credit.
Thank you.
Of course,
Thank
we had people there that could have helped you. We had our EMT people, so you were in good hands. Anyway, so there you go. Is that the same sort of story? Or?
That is the exact
Exactly,
same story,
okay.
and I'm just filing it away for
Yeah,
next time I have to ask for money.
Little
you know.
roast. Invite me. I'll tell the story.
Yeah.
But the dress couldn't have been any tighter. I mean, it was
Intentional, yes.
Well, it worked. We're just check yes and move on here.
Right.
Anyway, Rebecca, can you tell us a little bit about your background? And I so want to talk to you about how the website defines your job at Green Mountain, and I'll read it a little bit later. It's really, well, I'm going to read it now. It says, what do you do? It's community weaver, reluctant disruptor, and dweller of the middle ground. That is so cool. I was very eager to meet you because that's a great resume. I loved it. So anyway, go ahead. I'll
you.
stop talking for a change.
So that's on my LinkedIn, and I was a little nervous about it
Yeah.
until I started working with Tawnya, and a lot of it's step into who you are. And I'm like, this is who I am. And I'm not looking for a job, so I'm just going to put it out there.
That's cool.
But that is, you know, I've been in a lot of different environments where I've been like, this doesn't really work. This is kind of broken, and find myself being a disruptor. But reluctantly so. Like, I don't just break things
Right.
for the sake of breaking things, right? And then, you know, the weaver of middle ground is just always about like, okay, well, what do we really need to do to
That's
make
great.
something
I loved
work?
it.
Yeah.
Especially that you said community weaver.
Yeah.
So obviously, can you talk a little bit about your background and about your job, what you do at Green Mountain United Way?
Sure. So I'm trying to figure out which one of those to lead with. My background, I have a military background, small business owner. I've worked for the states. I have done a lot of things in the Mad River Valley. Been very involved in a lot of different community projects
Yep.
there. And then now what I do with Green Mountain United Way, we have many different programs, and I don't know which order to give this to you, because I don't want to
Good.
steal any thunder. Of course, we have Working Bridges, but then
Yep.
there are other places where I'm involved that, you know, I'm sitting at tables and I'm bringing the voices of working families. For instance, housing. Oftentimes we talk about housing,
Right.
and we spend, you know, a lot of time talking about the unhoused, because that is the most egregious to everybody's imagination. But I always go out of way to kind of be there and make sure we're talking about the working class people, our working families who are about to be unhoused. You know, further trying to direct attention in that way.
Maybe you're probably not the right person to talk to about this. I should talk to somebody in administration. But why did we have people leave the motel program in the winter? Just asking. I mean, why you couldn't think maybe the summer when it's like 60, 70 out instead of 10 below?
Well,
I'm so upset about this.
Are you talking about this latest iteration?
Yeah, they just had them leave the hotels and it's winter. And some people have died in their sleeping bags at night being outside.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of information to all of that. There was COVID funding that put people in hotels, and then there was when COVID funding was ending and when state funding was ending, and all these different deadlines of when people in different categories needed to be out of hotels. As of now, you know, people in a certain category that are unhoused and either have children under 19 or you know, medical barriers are able to be in hotels up until I think it's March 1st, maybe it's March 15th. It's the cold weather exemption. But it is so involved. There's a cold weather exemption, there's all the different criteria, there's needing to go to economic services and even find a hotel that's available and able to take you. But aside from that, you know, there was just a family shelter that was opened in Waterbury.
Right.
And so that is really good for us to see that happened, because we can't have kids unhoused, right?
No, of course not.
And then when kids were in hotels, my previous job was at Barry Elementary, and I was the McKinney-Vento liaison, and so that means I worked with families of unhoused, the unhoused families.
Yep.
And if somebody was in a hotel, which they were qualified to receive that benefit, we would have to give them transportation to and from, but then also try to figure out this whole safety net of things to help with, to you know, bring so the child could be in school ready to learn. And that, with the hotel situation environment, was just really, really difficult. So now that we finally have a family shelter, and I think it's only the third in the state, the other one's in White River Junction, another maybe in Bennington, that makes a huge difference, because now resources can be brought to that one location, and it's family specific.
And I think a lot of my church is doing a lot of overnight. They've arranged for in the Barry Odd. They arranged last weekend when it was 10 below for people to stay and be able to sleep all night. We do luncheons and different stuff we open up from 7 to 10 every morning so people can come. It's so cold. And
so
those
cold.
children.
And to be able to bring the community, you know, into that space and have a level of understanding and empathy, you know, regardless as to what your opinion is regarding funding going to hotels or motels specifically, that it's really making that human connection. And I can't remember the latest statistic, but it was over 300% that Washington County has increased in 1 year
unhoused.
in unhoused.
300%.
Over 300%. So,
Oh,
and
that's
we're
staggering.
looking just at Washington County, it's 40 children. So when we think about the unhoused, I think, you can read whatever news outlet you want, and it will be framed in, whatever population is supposedly unhoused. But we must look at this as a whole system of failure, and that we didn't get here overnight. This was a problem that had been really started, over the past 10, 20 years when we look at smart growth, when we look at, how we do building, how we do, supportive growth and community expansion in a good way that's respectful to Vermont, but also allowing people to have affordable housing. And that's really what we're seeing in our work is, our working families that we directly serve through many of our programs is people are working 1, 2 jobs. They cannot still afford the $1,400 a month rent, let alone a new house. So how do we look at housing as, yes, it's an issue, but it's also an investment, and that these Band-Aid solutions of shelters in Waterbury, which, yes, highly needed, temporary housing, absolutely, let's do all we can. But for the long term, we must invest in sustainable, opportunities if our state is going to continue growing.
Right.
If I can just jump
Yes,
on that.
please do.
So we, I was saying that our seat at the table is to make sure we're talking about working families, and we segued into unhoused because that is
Right.
that
Well,
is
that's the big deal. That's the big issue.
Absolutely, but
Yeah.
if we know that there are 40 kids in Washington County that are unhoused, that's because they've gone through economic services and they're with the hotel or they're with the shelter. What we don't know is the real number of kiddos that are unhoused, because there are people in cars, not huge numbers, thank God, that we know of just from, outreach workers and police officers. But there's that, and then there's also people who are couch surfing, and that's a number that's not
Right.
counted.
Right.
And so, and that right there.
Staying with friends and just sleeping on the couch. And,
Right.
yeah.
And it's warm and maybe it's safe, but it is not something that sets kids up to go to school or
right.
people to go to work or any of that other stuff. And we don't know that number.
Right.
But my gut is that
Intuitively,
that
we know
number
that,
is really big.
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
Interesting.
And also, we work really, we stay in touch with Mosaic and Circle, with domestic
Right.
abuse situations, and that people are having to make choices of possibly staying in, a violent situation to remain housed. And we always go back to the question when we hear these stories, whatever the thing is about housing or transportation or staying on, food stamps versus working full time. What would you do in that situation? If it was you and your family, if it was you and your child or your children, what choices would you feel that you had to make in that moment to make sure that your family was secure? So I think being able to understand that again, that human side,
Yeah.
in that place of maybe it's not me today, but if it was me, what choices would I make to make sure that my people are safe?
And I was thinking back during COVID, the kids have to be someplace that they could be on the computer, if they even have one,
Yes.
to learn from school. And then you had the flood, and half the schools were probably not even open for a long time.
Right.
I'm not sure about that, but I'm sure some of them were just not able to open up.
Not able to open up. And I mean, we saw you were at that time more in the Mad River Valley area.
No, I was in Barry for
Oh,
that.
that's right. You were in
Yeah.
Barry for the flood incident,
Yeah.
so you were more focused in
timing.
Barry. Yeah.
Yeah, well, and it was
Yeah.
interesting because the principals of the elementary school walked around the north end to see, to go and see some of their families and figure out what was
good for
happening.
them.
Yeah, absolutely. It was fantastic for them, but it really brought us, really shouted out how schools are not able to play that role. They went out and they tried to be a support, and then school was about to open, and then there was the own damage, and then they're hiring everybody, and they're training everybody, and they're figuring all that out. But it was just really obvious that schools are a huge part of our social net, our social safety
Sure.
net, but they are not equipped to do it.
Right.
That's what we learned there, for sure.
Well, I know I've talked to a lot of teachers during COVID. There is a skill to teaching on Zoom no, there is. It's a way to make it interactive.
Yes.
When you're staring at a TV screen and a kid's on the other side.
Right.
That takes special skills, and our teachers didn't have them, and those who were successful just winged it, and fortunately did well, but some of them I'm sure didn't. It must have been very frustrating.
Just struggled, and we're still seeing the I don't want to say the fallout, but how our kids' behavior and the mental health challenges that we're seeing still in our school age children, of readapting into being in person and readapting into social connection. I mean, these are formative years for many of our young people, and to be removed from a social structure for 1 to 2 years, that's huge.
Yep.
And I mean, being a single mom at that time and trying to homeschool and support my, my 12-year-old daughter on school, and then holding conference calls to run an agency, forgetting to put myself on mute during a large group meeting and yelling at my daughter, but you have to do your math now. It's like the struggle is real.
Right.
The struggle is real.
Life goes on around you. What are you going to do?
Exactly.
Yeah.
So immense appreciation for all the teachers out there.
Yeah,
That
for sure.
just
I don't know
continue
how
to
they did
support.
that.
Yeah. Yeah.
That was bad.
Yeah.
So anyway, thank you for all of that. That was housing is on Campaign for Vermont. That's all we talk about, and that's all we focus on. Well, a bunch of several other things, but housing is there's not a really good answer, and unless it costs us a boatload of money.
I keep on wondering about this, and I should look it up, but we have less people than we've had before, right?
In Vermont.
Baby boomers is the largest amount of people, and
Right, and they're
are we phasing them out? There's a better way to say that.
you're keeping us old folk around too.
So
Right.
where's all the inventory? I understand the inventory is mismatched, but why is it
Well,
that we need 5,000 more houses in the
Somebody
next 2 or
up in
3
the
years?
Northeast Kingdom, she's head of the planning commission up there. She's been there for like 100 years, and she's actually young and very attractive. But she said that the new thing about housing is single people want to rent and or buy rather than a family. It's more individual. So for 2 people, you need 2 houses, as opposed to years ago 2 people would share a house. And she said it seems to be what everybody's looking for is a home by themselves, which I don't know is healthy or good or not good, but that's the way it is.
And that's an interesting piece of the larger puzzle too. And we do have an aging population where highly encouraged to age at home. I mean, that has really been a strong message of we want people to age at home. We want them to be cared for.
Right.
There's a struggle in supporting that whole system in itself. But one of the advantages for older people to be aging at home is they're not inundating a healthcare system
Right.
or nursing assisted program that is just not built to sustain the baby boomer numbers. So it's all of these complex, long growing challenges that we're looking at. And I don't think there is one solution, but I think there's an opportunity to look at things from a more neutral perspective, less of judgment and more of what is the current system that we're operating in? How do we, to Rebecca's fine skill, disrupt this?
Right.
Because we have
I
to
love this.
we have to be creative right now as we move into literally a crisis. The crisis, don't waste the crisis. That is the time for innovation
Right.
and opportunity. And I feel us moving into that space.
That's good.
Yeah.
Because you write to me, there are tiny homes. There are other things that you
many.
can do.
Right.
Feels like a great time to blast Home Share Now.
Oh, I love
Right?
home share.
Right? Like,
Oh, do it.
Home Share.
Right.
Yeah, I actually, they ask me every year to speak up for them when we talk about Freetown Meeting Day.
Yes.
I show up with them.
Tight dress.
No,
I'll find
just
you.
so they know I'm not pregnant. But I love home share.
Yeah.
I want to, either one of you want to talk about that? Do you work with them closely?
We don't closely. I remember meeting one of their directors a few years ago, and he was, a great and vibrant and passionate person. I'm not quite sure where they are now in the whole housing solution. I know Chittenden has done some great work and really
Right.
pushed that forward. But again, it's another option in a list of what works for you. What
Right.
are you comfortable with? And we're looking at younger people that maybe aren't choosing to have children,
Right.
or more focused in career, looking for financial savings, and they want to be alone. What's the option for them? Is it
Yep.
smaller houses? Is
Right.
it more, developments where they can have options for condos or apartments and
Right.
mixed housing uses?
Yep.
We have to open up a little bit on how are we sharing our space for our older, for our lower income, for our higher income, and making it more of a welcoming community.
See, I would love a tiny home. Don't
Would
ask.
you?
I
I would
would.
too.
I would
Yes.
move. But my husband may not want to do
Yeah,
that.
yeah.
But I would if I was by myself. I would move into it. I think they're great.
Aren't
Yeah,
they?
I agree.
I love them. I think they're so cute.
And like having one level, you know,
Yeah,
as
exactly.
you age, we want one level. I don't want to vacuum anymore. I have 3 stories in my house. You know, it's an old house, but
Yeah.
it's, you know, I'm dragging the vacuum cleaner up and down
Yep.
the stairs. Why am I doing this?
Exactly. That's me. No more work.
Yes.
Anyway, before I wanted to talk about the programs of
Yeah.
United Way here in Central Vermont, but I started reading. United Way is like everywhere.
It is. Yes.
Worldwide. This is no joke. I mean, it's like everywhere. I was in charge of the state's United Way campaign 1 or 2 years, I think, way back
Yeah.
when I was younger. But and that yet they're in. Each one is independent. How do you work together? Because you've got your national one, a worldwide one, and then you've got the individual.
The individual. So we operate as, you know, individual nonprofits. So we have our own board of directors. We're our own 501c3, but we belong to the larger United Way Worldwide Network, which is 1,800 United Ways across the world.
That's staggering. That's
Isn't
amazing.
it staggering? Right.
It's amazing.
So if
We're
you
like
read,
McDonald's.
we are like
Our-
McDonald's, similar too. Yes, and we don't know how many are served total, but we can find out that number. But you know, looking at how do you unite a shared mission, and I think United Way has done a really great job. They've been in existence for I think it's 135 years now.
Wow.
Yeah, and started. Let me get this right because it sounds like the opening to a joke. You're going to like this. So, in 1887 in Denver, Colorado, a woman, a priest, 2 ministers, and a rabbi came together with a simple goal to make their community a better place for everyone through cooperative action. And that was the start of what was known as the community chest. So they raised money, I think it was $20,000, which is like $700,000 in today's market, and started to designate funds to local organizations that were in desperate need. So that small group of people came together and created this idea that we can create a connected and caring community just with this literally diverse group
Right.
of people to find a common goal.
What a great history.
Isn't it wonderful?
I love
Did it
it.
happen in a bar? I wanted to have happened in a bar.
They didn't put that
Did
in,
they?
but
No?
it was in
it in a
Denver,
bar?
Colorado. But yeah, we will dream of it happening.
Right, a
in
rabbi, a
you know,
woman. Who are the
two
players? They
priests.
walk into
Yes,
a bar.
Exactly.
Okay.
So think of, you know, way back when that they saw the need and they came together, and now jump ahead, you know, 100 plus years, and you have 1,800 United Ways. You know, small like us, we're a team of 9. We serve 5 counties in Vermont, so the northeastern side of Vermont, to larger, you know, United Way of Mass Bay, United Way in Miami, which are multi-million-dollar agencies
Right.
and serve vast counties. But the mission remains the same of mobilizing people in the impact of community collaboration.
Cool. Now, your offices are in Berlin.
We're
Are they not?
technically in Barrie because of the zip code, but yes, in Berlin. So we're in the.
No, you're in Berlin.
We're I know. I know where you are. Yes.
Don't start on
Yeah,
that.
exactly. We won't get into the post office situation. Yeah.
Drives me crazy.
So we're in the. We're a tenant of Green Mountain Community Fitness, which used to be
Oh, of
First
course, I
in
know.
Fitness. Right.
Yes.
So we're in the back side of that building,
Nice.
above a full care child care center, which is amazing. And we're one of their anchor tenants. So,
Excellent.
Yeah, it is.
I didn't know
excellent.
that because I'm on the Economic Development Committee in Berlin.
Oh.
I'm always involved in town. It's just
Yes. Do you
something
work
I
with Carla? Carla. Oh, what is her last name?
Oh, she's staff.
Yes, yes.
Yeah.
Okay. Anyway,
they
I
all knew
digress.
there. Rosemary was there before
Rosemary
her,
Morse,
and
yes.
she's retired now. And then, of course, I run into her more now than I ever did when
Right,
she
right,
was at town. But anyway,
Yeah,
but,
yeah.
Can't
I
believe
love
the
that
first
town.
question's not when the Chipotle is going to open. Like that feels like something you have direct answers for.
Ooh. No, but did you go to the new Mexican restaurant?
Oh, no, but I've
Yes,
heard it's
on
very
Berry
good.
You've
You
got
went-
to
Road,
go.
right?
It
Yes.
is. First of all, they completely changed the inside, which I never liked as a Panera's. It always was too choppy for me. I didn't like it. This is wide open and beautiful, and the food is excellent.
That's what I've heard.
Just a little plug.
A little plug. Yes, for
No
our
money's,
sponsor.
no money's changed hands. It's just, I just like it. But and you're the United Way nationwide. I wanted to read this because you did some analysis of the top needs nationwide, and they're exactly what we're dealing with here, which I thought was We're not alone.
No.
5.3% housing, 2.4% food, and we're going to talk about food insufficiency, which is another one of my triggers.
Yes.
2.8 utilities, 1.2 public safety, legal or consumer safety, and 1.1 mental health.
Right.
It's all, except for the utilities, that's every one of these things is what we're dealing with now.
Right, and I would reframe the term utilities and maybe think about basic needs.
Oh, is that what
the
that
utilities,
means?
so think about your electric bill, think about
Oh,
your,
okay, well then,
Yeah.
put down utilities for here too.
Exactly.
We can't afford it.
Right.
Yeah.
So what what you're listing is looking at kind of the national issues
Right.
that we all are very familiar with, on the landscape. But Vermont is no different in that. What makes Vermont uniquely different, I think, is that we are able to come together much more faster and much more in honesty around a shared issue. We are a very close-knit community, and I think that's one of the leading strengths of United Way is that we are willing to bring partners in and collaborate and look at, we are not the experts in housing, even though sometimes we sound like we are, but we are able to connect with the partners who are and understand what is the real issue and what is our role in playing and facilitating that conversation.
Right.
Yeah.
I think they should put down workforce development too, because I don't know how many restaurants I go to that are only open
Understaffed.
Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, or Sunday.
Yes.
And we went to a fairly new restaurant 2 weeks ago, and they said it will be a half-hour wait because we don't have enough staff personnel.
Yes.
So we had to wait for the numbers of tables to clear out so the wait staff could take care of us. I'm like, what is this?
Yeah.
Well, how do you, this gets into Benefit Cliff and some of the stuff that we do. You can't live here and be wait staff,
Oh,
right?
That's right.
If you share housing and all sorts of different things,
big
you
point.
can, but you get into this place where you can't have insurance. If you have any kind of health issue, you've lost your ability to have Medicaid, but you can't afford it because you're working and you have all these bills. It's a mess. I think we could really delve into that. But
Right.
when people say, "Where's all the workforce?" It's like people can't afford to live here, and I'm assuming less and less people are working, and they're probably working under the table, probably side hustles, because they need to have health insurance. They
Right,
need to have Medicaid
right.
for health insurance, and if you make more than I think $13,000 a year, you can't. But you can't live until you're making at least $26,000 a year. So there's that gap. And that's the folks that are taking care of our children,
Right.
our parents, their wait staff. That's why that's what I think.
Shame on
Essential
me for not
workforce.
thinking about
And I'm so
that.
sorry. Am I
no.
lecturing? And
No,
that's
no,
why I
I didn't think about it. I'm glad.
But it's essential workforce, and one of the programs that we offer is Working Bridges, and that's working directly with employers to provide immediate support for employees. The employees that we support are typically low to mid-wage employees. We serve 32 now large employers across the northern tier
Great.
of Vermont. So that includes Central Vermont Medical Center, Cabot Cheese, Darn Tough, all of the manufacturing and nonprofit and healthcare providers that are really continually looking for those long-term, employees.
It's always the same group of employers, isn't it?
Yes.
Wherever you go, they have the list of, Cabot and just what your
Yeah.
darn tough
Yeah.
socks. They're always there.
Yeah, socially responsible, really forward-thinking and open to understanding that this burden is not placed on the employer to come up with all of the solutions. And many of these employers pay a decent wage for the job that they're asking people to do. However, the cost of living in Vermont is continuing to go up as it is nationally. And where do you find that break for people? And one of the breaks that we give is offering an on-site resource coordinator at work to connect them
Oh,
with
really?
community resources. So our resource coordinators are, they're our staff, but they go to, let's just use Vermont Creamery as an
Yeah.
example. One day a week, we have a resource coordinator that goes there, connects with employees, makes personal relationships, and finds out, how are you doing? How's your financial situation? They get that, kind of human connection, which leads to someone reaching out and saying, my car just broke down, I don't know what I can do, can you help me?
Right.
This resource coordinator can provide access to a small dollar loan, regardless of what that employee's credit is. Also give additional resources that might help offset that cost of paying for a car. So again, the burden of the employer of having to come up with, how do I retain? That's not the only piece of the puzzle. Again, it's how do nonprofits and state agencies and also local community supports like your church and beyond come in to support what workforce needs to be stable.
That's great.
It is
Yeah,
great.
I'm
We
very
love that
proud
program.
of when you were, I mean, sometimes I get so mad politically and I'm complaining about something, and then something like COVID or something like the floods happen.
Yeah.
I mean, people come out of the woodwork to help everybody, to help each other. It's amazing to me.
Yeah.
I love it.
So when you look around Vermont, and also other communities too, California, with their recent
Oh, my
disaster, the plane crash, which we're just experiencing now in
Right.
Washington, what we see, and we're lucky enough, I think, to be able to see this more on a daily basis, that individual, personal crisis, who shows up for those people? Who shows up? And no judgment, no question, just I'm here.
I'm here to help.
I'm here to help you. What can we do for
Right,
you? And if
right.
I don't know, I bet you I know somebody that can help.
Right.
And when you offer that hand, it's not a handout, it's just I'm offering you a hand to assist you, and then extend that opportunity to help this individual to another person. That synergy of humanity, I guess, is what we're talking about, just general humanity.
Right.
It gets created. And to me and to the work that we do, that is the reason why we show up every day. And I think if you had to kind of encapsulate United Way, it's that look for the helpers. We are the helpers as well as our connected community.
Right.
Look for the love. It's there every single day if you choose to see it. Not to dismiss challenges, but we have to find that common ground with each other, politically, religiously, all of the
Right,
things.
right.
Because when it comes down to it, I know that I could count on you. If, hey, Pat, I'm in trouble, can you help me?
right.
You're not going to ask me, who did you vote for? You're going to say, what can I do for you?
How did you spend your money?
How did you spend
What
your
choices
money?
did you
right.
make?
Exactly.
Wow, I love that expression, hand up, not hand out.
Yes,
I saw it first at Capstone gazillion
Yeah,
years ago.
yeah.
And I thought, what a great, that's what people need. They don't need to be
No.
lectured to or,
No,
or turn, looked down on.
Yeah.
Just help them, for heaven's sake.
Exactly.
Yeah. Oh, go ahead.
One of the things we do is financial coaching. Some of the resource
Right.
coordinators will do that with people as they come in, and it's really turned into, it's not financial coaching because you can't tell. You can give somebody, tips on, okay, well, this might be on sale here, or this is a cheaper way to do this. But if you don't have enough money to make a basic
Right,
survival, household survival budget work, you don't
Right.
have enough money. So trying to tell somebody to put something into a 401k or whatever, it doesn't make
Maybe
any
not.
sense.
Yeah.
And so for us, that turns into something very different. We're now starting to train people on how to understand, okay, if you take this raise, if you make more hours, if this happens, this is what happens to your housing subsidy. This is the amount of money more that you're going to owe, that you have to come up with. Here's what's going to happen if there's a crisis, or et cetera. And that's a totally new kind of way of financial coaching. We're telling people how to prepare for that actual situation.
Yeah.
And it's not, the first thing you need to do is quit smoking.
Yeah.
Stop eating
Right.
out and all these other things. People understand that, but knowing whether or not you can take a raise because that's going to put you in a different bracket, and now you've lost part of your child care subsidy. That's the place that we find ourselves spending time with people.
Yeah.
I had that happen once. I was a single parent, and I got a raise, and when the money came home, I made actually $1 more. Went after the taxes and stuff, and it put me in a different bracket.
Yes.
Yes.
And I said, please take this back.
Yes.
I can't afford this raise.
Right,
And they didn't realize it. They actually helped me out, but
right.
because I worked there a long time. But what is this? Like
Right,
the daycare center, exactly what you were saying.
Yeah.
It happened to me.
And it's
Like, don't
happening
do-
today, and
Yeah.
those are primarily the people that we work with, and not just those that are receiving the raise, but also the employer. You're doing a great thing. You are offering advancement, and you're really encouraging your employee and appreciating them. Let's look at actually what their real life situation is.
Right.
And we want to move people off of state benefits for sure, and the people that we work with
Right.
want to be off state benefits.
Yeah.
But when it comes down to the dollar amount of what they could potentially lose in housing or child care subsidy, you're looking at $10,000,
Right, you step
$14,000. Exactly. And again, I ask the question, what would you do in that situation? So understanding, what that household situation is, working with the employer in that situation as well, and saying, how about if we look at, a 6-month advancement, at this rate, and we also offer a food supplemental program on site. So it's a take-home meal. We can help do the math. So maybe you're going to lose some dollars in SNAP, thousands of dollars. Let's work our way through of how we can budget that and make that a gap that you can hold. And maybe in those 6 months, that employer can review again and give you an additional raise and advancement. We're retaining you, we're training you, and we're building the loyalty to this company while still respecting what the choices are that you make.
That's great.
Yeah.
You mentioned benefit cliff.
Yeah.
Dare I ask if they've ever fixed that?
No, that's
We
that's,
will. That's exactly what
We're
we're
on it.
talking about.
Are you really? Do you have a bill up there, or
There's conversation, but go ahead.
I was going to say, well, we can't, right? We can't lobby and create a bill, but
why can't you lobby and create?
because
bill?
we're a nonprofit.
We're a nonprofit.
We
I
can
mean,
advocate, but
Oh,
we
okay,
couldn't
right,
actually.
right.
She'll be running for something
Yeah, right,
next year, so I'm
yeah.
prepping her. I'm prepping
I
her
hate
to
running.
run.
I'm a jogger. I'm a jogger.
Gonna get her up there.
And it's interesting because as we were going through this training, we actually have somebody who's making a board game for us, Game Theory in Burlington, which is amazing.
Cool.
Because we want to take this concept to our employers and decision makers to explain this whole benefit cliff. Because again, I'm just going to use that example of, you're just left your parents' house, or you're unemployed, or you're about to leave your parents' house, and you're eligible for Medicaid because you're not made $13,000 a year, but now you have your first job, and let's say you have asthma. I don't know, what are the things that you can have that are so expensive, that are like so many things, right?
Diabetes.
You have diabetes there.
Yeah.
Yeah. Or you need insulin. The things
Right.
need to happen, like you need to have insurance, but you're in this place now, you make over that dollar amount, you can't get your insurance, and then getting it in the Health Connect is like another $100, and then you have your deductible, and then you have your co-pays, and it just put you in this different place. So that's just an example of why
Right.
people get stuck where they are. And so when we're thinking about how to change that, there's a couple things that need to happen. Like at the state, the way that if we had a benefit phase out, that happened. I think the child care subsidy is a great example of that, and they've done a really good job with that. The more money you make, the less of a subsidy
Right,
you get, but it's
a
very
sliding
reasonable.
scale.
Exactly.
So there's that, and there's also some different ways for programs to be on the same, the same requirements across the board, because it's one thing to have Medicaid, it's another thing to have a housing subsidy, it's another thing to have 3 squares and your child care subsidy, and all of these pieces.
Yes.
It's very confusing, and so working with that is something else that can be helped. But at the end of the day, as we delve into this and do this training, people aren't being paid enough to live here, and now the state, the feds, nonprofit partners, the community are all pitching in to figure out how these our workforce can survive. And it just doesn't, I think about how are we going to fix that? And I'm like, well, who has the power to fix that?
That was a big thing, benefits. When I was in the Department of Labor more than 10 years ago, we were fighting for it. Nothing, they haven't, other than
Well,
the
sure, child care subsidy
Yeah,
is
childcare.
Right.
huge,
Yeah.
very helpful.
Because I actually pitched that back when I went single parent, raised my daughter, when in Westchester County in New York. When she went to daycare, they looked at my check, and for a long time I got it free because of my income.
Right.
Yes, the check was on the other side of
Yes.
But as I got promoted and more raises, then I had to start paying.
Right.
And they had a very nice percentage, so the savings didn't get wiped out. We just worked a deal, and the more money I made, the more I paid, and it worked out beautifully.
Yeah.
But for a long time, I didn't have to pay anything because I wasn't making that kind of money to be
Right.
able to. So
And you wanted to go to work.
Right.
You wanted to have your child supported in a
Right.
healthy environment, and those were the choices that you could make that were good for
yeah,
you.
right.
And look at
it
you
worked
today.
out great.
If that
No
had,
money, but that's it.
Yeah, but if that had not been in place,
Yeah.
your journey would have been
Oh.
probably drastically different.
For sure, I'd be
Yeah.
home with mom and dad.
Exactly. So when we look at when you use that term, the benefit cliff, it's like you're getting your quote benefits, and I question the term benefit. It's like, what's the benefit? You're
Yeah,
meeting
right.
your basic
Thank you,
needs.
thank you,
Okay,
right.
yeah, thank you so much for feeding me. But you're on this benefit, and then all of a sudden it's the cliff. You advance, you make progress in one way, and you have a drastic fall, literal, off the cliff.
Yep.
So there is yet to be a tiered system that encourages advancement while still supporting. There's been drips and drabs and examples. Other states have done it considerably well.
Because the concept isn't hard.
No,
And
no.
it's not even hard to implement once you figure it out.
So let me ask you this. Do you think, benefits, looking back how it was really established, and it really started in the 50s when women started getting divorced and being single on their own.
Right.
So they needed some additional social support benefits. So looking at why that started and to where we are today, and that a majority of the women that are, on benefits are single parents, really struggling to make it be. I think that there's a gender thing happening here. It is predominantly a female challenge for sure. Not to say that there aren't men that are, supported by benefits as well, but why is the female workforce maybe secondary and a priority when they are really filling huge gaps? We saw that in the pandemic when women were taken out of the workforce at healthcare and beyond, that's an essential workforce. So if this is one of the primary female workforce challenges, we should be looking at this more closely.
Right. And it's good for women to be at work, to build up their career.
Yes.
Because if you, not that I'm encouraging people not to stay home with their kids, because they've always wanted to
Exactly.
do that.
You should have
But
the
then when you're
choice.
ready to go back to work, people have got the jump on you for 10 years,
10 years.
Of employment and
10
experience.
years. Yeah, exactly. So you've lost that benefit or that wage advancement and knowledge advancement. Yeah. I was talking to a woman the other day, and it was, we're moving into our, getting closer to 60, and I guess we should be thinking about retirement. And it's like, I feel like I'm into, and maybe you feel the same way, and you'll be coming into it, in the next 10 years you're getting refined in the work that you do,
Yeah, I
and
haven't
your
stopped
knowledge and
working.
your ability. Exactly.
Yeah.
And that even with those losses of child years, it's like the other side of that, men too, but women are really refined in their 50s and 60s, and I hope that we can support them moving forward, to work as long as
So
possible.
how do people find you? Are they referred, or do they call and say, hey, I need help? How do they know to call you? Because we didn't go over these, but you have got so many things that you
got
provide.
things,
You got things, what is this? Programs that you provide for people. It's amazing.
So a lot of the program we do is through Working Bridges. So we have different food access that's through Working Bridges, which is the businesses we have relationships with that our resource coordinators go. And we will have grants or different things we do to backfill them with food needs.
Right.
And so that's not really something that somebody would call the office for.
Unless it's an employer who would like to have a Working Bridges program, give us
Yes.
a call.
Please do.
We have a few slots open right now.
Other spaces where we are is, you're definitely going to talk about Thrive, and do you want to get into social determinants of health?
We could go down that road. That's
Okay.
a pretty that's a
Sorry.
steep road. I don't have much time.
15 minutes
Oh, we have
left.
15 minutes.
Okay.
Let's switch it a little bit.
Go right ahead. It's
Because
your
we
show.
do obviously look at the larger issues and how we can do that effectively and collaboratively with our partners. We also recognize that there's initiatives that can engage people in volunteerism or giving at a different level,
Volunteers, yep.
and really understanding what does it take to give, and giving people not just the opportunity to help something else, but experience that action of giving, which is an amazing thing when you watch it happen. And one of the programs is Tatum's Totes, which Rebecca and
That's
our other
great
teammate,
program.
Sarah, really helped to move forward, and that's working with our Barrie and Newport and St. Johnsbury DCF agencies to support children transitioning into emergency foster care.
Right.
We are not acting like we are going to solve the issue
Yeah.
of children in unhealthy households and having to be removed. But what we do recognize is that child in that moment of emergency needs immediate support and sense of safety and belonging. So that's one of our programs of providing either a backpack or a diaper bag that offers a stuffed animal, a blanket, toothbrush, all of the things that they did not have when they left that home. Anything that they do have in our experience is put into a trash bag. So think about a 10-year-old little
Oh, no,
girl
trash
leaving
bag.
a home, and her belongings are in a trash bag, and she's moving into an unfamiliar space.
Right.
Here's me, here's my trash.
Right.
So really reframing that experience
Good.
for them as best as we can, but being able to talk about what does it mean to be a child in foster care? Regardless of what your opinion is about how they got to that point, we can all talk about the children.
Yeah, because, on the other end of that, it's when the rug gets pulled out of people when they age out.
Yes.
That's another benefits
youth.
cliff, but a little different.
Absolutely.
They just, goodbye, you're out of here, see ya.
Absolutely.
And that's just tragic. I've met quite a few women who, now women, who have been aged out of foster care, and they're standing there going, hello.
Now what?
Now what?
Yeah. And what has my experience been thus far
Right.
to be able to trust and move forward?
Right.
Yeah.
Something I love about that program, of course, we're giving something to the child in the moment who's just in total crisis. And in that bag is a stuffed animal, maybe some slippers, a nightlight, a fuzzy blanket, some games,
Right.
Just some comfort items. We should probably put
That
chocolate in
are
there.
his or hers, they're mine.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But also what we're doing with that is when we bring that to DCF, that is like the hardest job in the world, to be a case manager that is in that position, working with that family, removing the child, trying to, on top of the work they do, the bureaucracy and like the lack of staffing and all those other
And they
pieces.
all have way too many cases.
Yes.
Oh my
right?
goodness.
I mean, it's staggering when you talk
It's
to them.
amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But when we show up with those bags, it's like, we're supporting you in your work. We're part of the community that sees you, sees what you're doing, and we got you. This tiny little thing.
Right.
And then that bag and child goes to the foster parent, who also really, really hard job.
Yeah.
Who now sees, okay, there's this random thing in the community that is also involved in this somehow or another. There's people that care. Yeah. And then the last piece is we actually work with the church, who gives us a lot of donations to fill those bags. And so those people all feel very connected to the work we're doing in this whole situation. In the moment, we made something better for that kiddo for 5 minutes, but all the other people that were impacted, and I think that's a lot of the work we do.
Yep.
Is connecting and creating capacity for other organizations to do the work.
Yeah.
That's cool.
And to be seen.
Yeah, right. Somebody, help me.
Yeah.
Listen.
Just see me.
That's really, and I just was looking at the time because there are so many. Can I just read this? I have to read this really quickly because I think it's amazing. The programs, and maybe I don't know if you saw this list, but working bridges, employee loans, saving loans, resource coordinators we've talked about, on-site classes,
Yes.
education and training, business collaborative group, which you've just talked about, and income advance loan. I don't know what that is, but maybe we should talk. No, what is that?
So
That
that's
they
part
don't,
of
not
the
making,
working. Yeah,
not
that's
making
part of-
enough?
Oh, okay. Well, that is part of Working Bridges, and one of the things that the resource coordinators have access to. We have relationships with different banks, and basically, when an employee is like, my car, my engine blew,
Right,
whatever happens, because they're in good standing with their employer, we help cultivate this income advance loan. And so it's not a predatory loan. It is kind of a payday loan, but it is all very reasonable, and the
Great.
bank the bank and the employer, everybody's kind of assuming a little bit of risk, so it's less scary. So now somebody has access to these funds that
Great.
they generally wouldn't have because of credit issues.
Right.
Yeah.
And
so.
sometimes it doesn't take much money. And sometimes it's
Right.
just show you care or something, and they're okay and make it through.
Yeah, and I mean, like people's getting their tax refunds is such a huge part of their budget, and then having this extra tool. So these
Right.
little potential windfalls, if they seem like
That's
that,
great.
because I always think of it as like standing in where the waves are crashing and you never can quite stand up. When you don't have enough money to live.
The more
and
you
do
try,
things,
you get beat back.
and then your car breaks. And then you have to miss a day of school because you're going to take up a day of work because you're going to pick up your kid. It's like constantly standing in the wave trying to like get up.
Right.
Okay.
I always thought as a single parent, whenever I had any money, the car would break.
Yes.
And I'd go, uh-oh, we have money.
What's going to break?
So
It's coming.
do you remember your mindset? And we like to call it kind of that mindset of scarcity. You're living in that moment of something else is going to go wrong. It's like the
Yeah,
assumption
the
is
shoe,
that don't
it's getting
feel
bigger.
safe. Exactly. And if you do feel safe, don't get too comfortable in that space. But you are always living literally in the moment, as opposed to be able to project out to, what do I want to do in a month? How do I create a savings account
Right.
to buffer an emergency that might come up? the mindset is very different when you're in that cycle. You know,
Yeah.
I was raised by a single mother, and we lived in poverty, and it was extreme. In adjusting that frame of how you see things, I mean, now I can have covers on my cabinets. So for years, I had to have the cabinets like without doors on them so I could see that I had food. And
Oh,
but it was
interesting.
because
Yeah.
I needed that reassurance of, I am okay, I'm safe, I create safe space for myself. But I have an appreciation, and I think you probably do through your experience of being a single mom, is that you never quite adjust to feeling completely secure.
Yeah,
And
no.
that can be an asset, but when you're living in those moments, who is there to really help you be able to think a day out and, you know, a week
Right.
out, possibly a year out, to really advance yourself? And that's a primary goal of the work that
And
we
there
do.
are so many people dealing with this on a daily basis.
Daily.
I think that,
hourly.
and that's the big thing that we would really like to bring focus to as we do
Yes.
more and more work. But the federal poverty level, folks from 185% on the federal poverty level, let's just say that's, you know, if you're a single person, $17 an hour, up to 320% on the federal poverty level. I'm sorry, I'm going to make this boring, but basically people that are in that bracket, and so we're talking about, you know, individuals that are making about $17 to $25 an hour, families of 3 that are about, you know, $23 to $29 an hour. So all the workforce we have that are in between those wages are struggling.
Yes.
That is a lot
Daily.
in Vermont.
Yep, right.
And those are the people
Right?
we see.
Right.
Those are the people that
Yes.
come through our doors.
And add to that, and I wanted to talk to you, but we only have a few minutes left, food insufficiency.
Yes.
Okay.
It drives me bonkers when I have like the food shelf people in and so.
Yes.
I'm like, how can you do this in an agricultural state? And every year it gets worse.
It does.
It's not getting any better.
It does. Do you consider, with all the people in all the circles that you run with, is food still considered almost, I don't want to say a privilege, but to be well fed?
But it's the first thing you can cut.
Exactly.
Because nobody will
Yes.
see that.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
And you have to keep your lights on, you
Yep.
got to keep your car moving.
Exactly.
And what's the thing that nobody will see? It's the
It's
food.
the food. And again, what choice would you make in that situation?
Right.
Heat or going to the dollar store with $5 and
Exactly.
getting the high carb food? But you should be making a healthy choice, because how dare you?
Yeah,
It's like,
right, exactly.
you
Well,
can't win.
there is help, obviously, and the people that I know that run the food banks,
Yes.
they have said over the years the people have changed dramatically who
Yes.
are going. People come from
Yeah.
work all dressed up
Yep.
Yep.
because
In the line.
they can't afford the food.
Exactly.
It's you can't judge people by living in a house or
No, no,
anything
no.
anymore. Just
No, and so
bite your
and the
lip.
problem's not food scarcity. That's a symptom of the larger problem of like lack of affordability. Whenever we think about that, we think about food. Like, how do we get more food to the food
Right.
shelf? How do we solve this problem? That's a Band-Aid. That's not the problem.
Right.
Right?
It's the overall affordability.
Not that anybody should ever stop giving to their food banks.
Yeah, right, no,
to their food
exactly.
shelves, please.
support your food
Yeah,
shelf.
right.
You know, but
Yeah.
that's the way we as individuals are like, how are we going to help figure this out? We don't have the power to figure out the affordability
I was going to
issue.
interview John Sales in a couple
Oh,
of weeks,
good.
and
Yeah,
he's
yeah.
already laughing at me. So I know what we're talking about. Because every time I see him, I ask him about what's the current 1 out of 5, whatever it is
It's,
for
I think the last statistic,
one out
and
of-
John can absolutely correct me, but it's 2 out of 5.
2 out of 5.
And that continues to go up above pandemic levels. And if we remember the pandemic,
Right.
that was when we really saw that spike of
Yeah,
food
empty
insecurity.
shelves and-
Empty shelves, you know,
Wow.
long lines at the airport trying to get the federal food.
Right.
We have not recovered from that.
Yeah.
Do you remember those lines?
Oh my God! Do I remember
Yeah.
at the Granite Museum
Yes,
the line to get a box of food that
Yes.
the military was handing out?
yes.
I was like dumbfounded. It was all the way down the road for as far
Exactly.
as your eye could see.
Exactly, and we had staff in some of those lines
Oh,
picking
did
up
you?
for families that were working at the hospital who could not leave. So it was the start of, as much as that was a horrific thing, it was an unveiling
Yeah,
of
how bad this
how
is.
bad this is, and how essential food is
Right.
within the whole ecosystem of support.
Well, when somebody told me that, it dawned on me that they were absolutely right because that food is the one thing that you can cut back on that nobody will know, and they won't see
Right.
it, and
Right.
you'll save money that way.
Exactly, exactly. The
Ramen
choices we
noodles
have to
and
make.
that sort of stuff.
Yeah.
And then we go into like the much bigger system of what's happening with healthcare, right?
Oh, well, that's another whole-
I,
We could
4
do
minutes,
another
4
show.
minutes. But I
Another
do want
show.
to just mention, like, when people are making choices about their food at the dollar store and the things that they're eating
Right.
and whatever conditions they may have before that, this is now. I mean, it's going to turn into more and more of a healthcare crisis.
Right,
Right. Especially.
Well,
as we
it's
close
been interesting
primary
listening
care.
to Robert Kennedy. I don't know if he's going to
Mm-hmm.
be, but he's brought up some, look at the food you're eating and what's in it. That's, if you're going for the dollar store stuff, you're not eating the right,
Right.
maybe it's the only thing you have, so that's
And,
good.
and
but-
he's looking, I mean, regardless of what your take is
Yeah, yeah,
on
no.
his overall perspective
Yeah.
on vaccines and thus, he's looking at the advancement of processed food and
Right.
why, and that happened, 40 years ago when
Sure.
we really started to see that, which was a necessity at the time for quick and easy access and more affordable.
Right.
But at what was the compromise? And now we're seeing that is a much more preferred method
sure.
of diet, also more affordable. How do you get organic food versus a Swanson, but a boxed chicken that's already cooked and fried, just nuke it.
Yep.
It's not a hard choice.
This reminds me of something that is very pressing. So when we talk about benefit cliffs and getting people food and figuring these things out, one of the things that are one of the things that have been incredibly helpful over the last couple of years has been lunch at school.
Yes.
And so
Oh,
for
right.
single parents,
I wasn't supportive of it in the beginning, but now I am. I
you
understand.
flipped?
Yeah.
because
go
people
ahead.
don't necessarily get it because they think it's another thing we're bringing food to all the rich kids or whatever.
right.
But this is huge for our working class.
Yes.
Huge.
Yeah, that's great.
that fact, when
I,
we do
I was
budget,
really,
yes.
I was against it because I thought
Yeah.
if I have money, why shouldn't I pay for?
Exactly.
And those kids shouldn't be embarrassed if they don't have money.
right.
But with everybody,
Yeah. Right.
you cover a multitude of sins or something, but you help a lot of people without embarrassing them.
Exactly.
And you help them with good food.
And when we
Yes.
work with people that are struggling on a daily financial budget, working, but still not quite making it,
Right.
this is a resource that we can
perfect.
offer you and do the math for you.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
perfect.
Yeah.
Well, I'm going to say thank you very much. Would you like to tell people how to contribute? Because
absolutely.
I'm sure fundraising is part of the stuff you do.
It's part of what we have to do for sure. We
Yeah.
would love to talk to people in person. They can call us, 802-613-7989. I rarely call us.
It's in my phone. It's in my phone.
You can call me personally on my cell phone, 802-318-5703, and I'd
There
be
you
more
go.
than happy to talk to you. And also check out our website at gmunitedway.org. And we are also located at 652 Granger Road, and we welcome visitors from 8 to 5 every day
Very
of
nice.
the week. Yeah.
Excellent. Thank you both very
Thank
much.
you. Thank
We'll
you,
have
Pat.
to have you on again
Please.
sooner than 10 years for
Yes.
sure. Anyway,
10-year
thank you for tuning in and listening. I hope you enjoyed the show. This is Pat McDonald, your host for Vote for Vermont, where our tagline is listening beyond the soundbites.